Hello and welcome to the Business Spotlight interview series. I'm your host, Barrett McDonald, and I'm joined today by Carrie Forbes, CEO of League Data and Technicos. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to kick things off a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure, and thank you for having me. So, again, you mentioned my name and what I do, but League Data and Technicost, we are, I'd say, enterprise banking partners for the credit union system. So, my company, particularly League Data, we're actually owned by the 39 credit unions in the four Atlantic provinces. And we do the financial technology. So basically, everything that they need to run their business, we're doing in the background for them. And we're also their chief information officer. So I've been there about 10 years coming up this year. Prior to that, I was the strategy officer for the organization, and we're small and mighty. So even though it's a big job, we do everything that banks do. We're a total of 50 people for all of that work. So
Wow,
it's yeah, and it's a very interesting kind of space. We get to see it from a different perspective.
absolutely. More of a 10,000 foot view in that regard, in some
Absolutely.
ways. So what are some of the common misconceptions you've come across in running a business, and what do you do to combat them?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think, particularly in the space that we're in, and a lot of times I think people think that we have all the answers to everything they're trying to solve. And that can be sometimes, I think, a lot of pressure. And you might think, oh gosh, I gotta deliver X. But, I think part of the art of the possible is solving it together and kind of figuring out where that can go. But when you're in, a space and you have expertise, you really gotta know the bounds of where that is, right? And sometimes people can assume, a set of expertise or assume, that you can offer or deliver more perhaps than what's in, maybe especially if they're comfortable with what you do. So you have to be really clear about that. And I think the other side, particularly in technology, and this is the biggest one, it's truly a people business. We can abstract it all the way we want with tools and tech and chatbots and all type of things, but at the heart of it, if we're going to make good decisions and we're going to do work that really impacts people, you're back to being a people business somewhere in the mix. So I think that that's two of the big lessons I've learned in this role anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, Carrie. So what would you say have been your biggest learnings as an employer since you began in business?
Oh boy. I'd say, and again, it's probably gonna be a people theme related all the way through, but when you're in business, it's really easy to, especially as you progress, right? And you progress through leadership or your role changes, or even if you're a founder and you're taking on and you're scaling, where you start tends to be there tends to be some principles or some things that you start with that stay grounded, but things start to shift as you go out and as you progress. So I think one of the challenges is that you need to kind of stay true to yourself and with the purpose of why you began, or you can get really taken off your feet very, very easily. So I think that those are really important lessons that when you're in business and you're thinking about where you're going, you're going to change, the business is going to change, but where's your center? Because if you don't have that somewhere, you can very easily make poor strategic decisions or lose the very heart of what made you good at the beginning. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So when you're looking for your staff and your employees and your subcontractors and everything, what qualities do you look for them in them, and how do you foster that positive work environment?
Really, really like this question. There is, I think it's a Peter Drucker quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's absolutely true. And I think we lived that through the pandemic because we had a strategy. And not only did the pandemic disrupt us, we actually got an end of life notice on our most important system and had to completely pivot. So at the end of the day, if you're in, we all want to make money, let's face it. But if you're not really clear on why you're doing it, and perhaps the whole point of it, then you're not going to be in it for the long game. And you're not going to be able to really start to attract and align people to what it is that makes you unique, that what's your value proposition, period.
Right.
So I think that's a really important principle to make sure that you're focused on as well. And when I'm looking for people is that principle. So when I'm doing a partnership, which we do a lot of partnering, if I'm hiring someone, I'm looking for that character because that's something. And first of all, I'm not looking for a yes person. We make a lot of very big decisions and we're a small, lean team and we have to rely on each other a lot and we have to rely on our partnerships. So trust and integrity is crucial. So it's not about perfection, but it's about when something happens, can we sit down and chat about it and resolve it, or does this happen? Finger
Right.
pointing, and we're not going to be able to do what we need to do unless we're all oriented around a set of principles. So that's how we manage it. A lot of times, for starting a new business relationship, or just, introducing, we'll sit down and go, here's the principles of how we start, and this isn't about contracts. In fact, hopefully we wouldn't have to pull out a contract if we're living our principles. But it really gets down to how we're going to work together through the relationship of whatever that is. And without those things, especially when you're dealing with something like cybersecurity, in those moments, that's when, integrity really matters. And if folks are operating out of fear or confusion, or there's just not something there, you can actually create a ton of risk. So I really think that it sounds fluffy, but it's actually probably one of the most important things is, can you really identify that sense of integrity? And it doesn't mean we all have to agree. It means we all have to be really transparent and open.
Absolutely. So, Carrie, what do you attribute the growth to in your business?
In our business, and it's been challenged over the years because, financial services and the way that and the consumers and what they want, it's a moving target. And we're being disrupted, of course, by the technology industry itself, and all sorts of new players. But what we see as growth, particularly in what we do, is that connection back to what matters. So with your audience, like whatever it is you're offering, whether it's a service or a product, there's got to be something that resonates that makes people want to do business with you. And in our market, it's trust. We're in the business of dealing with people's money and their data. So what's been very successful for us is putting our credibility and showing people how we care about that and what and the lengths that we do, and that in our in our B2B kind of market, that's what's really important. And then down to our members who use it, do they have confidence? So that's an important, that's kind of what we're truly, if you want to say what we're selling, it's really about trust and confidence. Now if it was someone else, it might be about innovation, it might be about something different, but whatever that is, if you're not demonstrating it, whether that's whether you're not demonstrating it in your product sets or in your words and in your contracts and the way you do business, then you're going to lose out because there's just so many ways now and so much competition. And people can look, they can check your reputation, they can test those things. So it's crucial to walk your talk.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sounds like there's a lot of balls bouncing in the air and a lot of juggling going around. So how do you go about balancing your personal life with the demands of running this massive business?
I love this question because it's been a very significant personal challenge. I was a pandemic CEO because I came to the role in smack in the middle of it while we were all in lockdown. And in some ways that was probably good from reflection, but it's also as things started to get busier, started to realize how much more impact is required and needing to create a lot of space. So one of the things I do personally is I practice and I actually teach yoga. But that's whether it's that or some other activity, something, and we promote this a lot in our organization with our teams. You need to do something to manage your overall physical being and not, and your mental well-being. All of it's going to come out in the wash because we use our minds more than anything. That is our, it's not like, when my father, who is, kind of a labor person, using a hammer or, a saw, whatever was it. But well, now we're using our minds. So if we're not taking care of those things with good, with our health, our well-being and taking time for rest, you will see it in the outcomes, both individual and personal, and the productivity. So you can measure it, but I think even at the if you want to build a great culture where people want to stay, then you have to prioritize it and you have to model it. So that's something I do as I try to practice it and I try to kind of encourage our teams to take that time, because you will see a huge difference if they don't.
Absolutely. So thinking over the last 10 plus years, if you had to start all over again on this journey, what would you do differently the next time around?
Oh my. There's so many things, like this is like that butterfly effect question at times, right? Because sometimes you're like, well, if I change this, then all these other things wouldn't have happened. However, one thing is to be less fearful. And I think to jump into things that maybe I didn't, or maybe I shied away from a little bit more, be a little less be more fearless. And I think what I see that a lot in younger folks coming out of school or starting out in their path is it can be overwhelming, and sometimes questioning that great idea and, not putting your hand, waiting on it, and then later going, oh, I should have said something. I should have done that. So the repercussions for, having an idea that doesn't fly are so minimal compared to, the impact of holding it back. So, I think I would have probably jumped in and taken a few more risks with some things and seen where they would have gone, for sure. And that comes with inner confidence in yourself, which again, we can all do more to work on, but yeah, be a little more fearless.
Absolutely. It's a good piece of advice. So last question off the books. If you get to see underneath the hood of a lot of different businesses at a lot of different times in their development, what's the one piece of advice you have to a potential budding entrepreneur watching this series at home?
Wow. One of the things when we first, I'd say like pre this, we were just sort of talking about it, is there's an energy that draws an entrepreneur. And you have it. I laugh. When I was a kid, I remember I had all kinds of bike sales, and I did bike wash sales, sorry, lemonade, you name it. And we were always figuring out, oh, we could make, and it was an excitement around the possibilities of what we could do. Harness that, but yet also remember in those times where the challenges are, where that spark comes from, and where that energy comes from, and understanding it, because that's what's going to draw you back to it in the hard days. And it's also what's going to draw you away when you've nailed something and you've got that oh, we've done it, what's next, where do I
Right.
go? And back to what we're talking about, there are times when you're going to want to be led by money, and you're going to have lots of people to do it and want to go more, but you're going to feel that bug again, and that's that creative spirit that got you there in the first place. And that's an important voice to listen to, because I think in the long run, anybody can work for money, but that's what's going to keep you in that happy place of being an entrepreneur and being able to add the value and seize opportunities that aren't there. So again, go back to think about what got you there in the first place, be a little fearless. And then I like what, we were talking about earlier, and use people around you that are smarter and have the skills that you don't necessarily have. And that's been my success, is I love to surround myself with the smartest folks I can find who know how to do things way better. And then you're building succession, and you're building a lot more, because otherwise at some point it's all going to fall on your shoulders. So yeah.
Fantastic, Carrie. Well, thank you for everything and your time today. It was a pleasure doing this interview, and to everyone watching at home, I look forward to seeing you on our next episode.
So, well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.